8 additional Korean words have recently been included in the Oxford English Dictionary. We cover this inclusion and more on Press Perspective today. Hello and welcome to Press Perspective for this Friday, January 9th here in Seoul. I'm Min Sunhee. K-words, if you will, are going global, riding the wave of Hallyu into the Oxford English Dictionary. For more on this reality and other issues of interest today, I have Camille Ruiz with French Radio News Network RFI here in the studio. Camille, it's a pleasure to have you back.
Thank you for having me.
I also have writer Colin Marshall with us. Colin, it's great to have you here.
Glad to be here, thank you.
Camille, we start with you. A total of 8 Korean words have been included in the Oxford English Dictionary. What are they and what makes this latest inclusion so important?
Well, first of all, we have ramyeon. Some of my friends and family, French friends and family, know the Japanese word ramen, and I'm sorry for that, they are confused. So the part of the foreign public that is watching and don't know what ramyeon stands for. It's a Korean instant noodles that you cook very easily and in the quickest way at home, or it's very popular near the Han River, for instance. Anyway, so yeah, please don't make the mistake again, my friends and family. It can be annoying for both Korean and Japanese people. I mean, I would be very annoyed if someone says Gouda cheese is from France, for instance. Don't know if the parallel is meaningful, but yeah. Anyway, second of all, we have another food-related word, bingsu. Also, I love ramyeon. I'm not fond of bingsu, but maybe I have no taste. Bingsu is a dessert, originally a red bean paste served on top of shaved ice with condensed milk. Sometimes there are fruits or rice cakes. And yeah, if we stay in the gastronomic field, we also have Korean barbecue, which is now included in the Oxford English Dictionary. I don't have to explain much. It's the Korean way to eat meat. Often in the place where you eat, there's often like seats that you can open to put your jacket on so it doesn't smell. And above all, the way the meat is marinated and cooked. So yeah, it's also symbolized the culture of having a meal with colleagues in South Korea and having like beer or soju with friends. But actually a word that surprised me in the list was officetel, because I live myself in a hostel in Korea, and before coming I didn't know what was this type of housing. So well, it's an accommodation often that come often furnished with essential appliances. And we also have sanbae, which is a person from the same university but older than you, or in the highest grade. So for instance, I can say Youngjae, a member of the K-pop group Day 6, is my sanbae because we studied in the same university, yeah, in Seoul.
Really?
동국대학교. And we also have Hallyu, which is the most brave women, I believe, a way to call the mermaid of Jeju Island. They can dive in the water for some long minutes to catch fishes. And there's also ajuma. I wonder if ajushi is in the dictionary or not, but yeah, it's the way of calling a very old woman. And as a foreigner, I never use it in front of the person because I don't know, it's sometimes, yeah, complicated. And let's finish with my absolute favorites, jjimjilbang, which is a sauna. But again, Korean way, you can eat inside traditionally boiled egg or having a glass of jjigae, and you have that particular way of wrapping your towel on the head, like sheep head. Yeah, so cute. People can also get a body scrub, which is very energetic, and you have to be naked in the non-mixed changing rooms and a hot bath. yeah, I love it. That's all for the list.
Yeah, I love chimchilwang as well. Colin, pundits are linking this phenomenon of English words being included of Korean words, that is, being adopted by the English language, to the popularity of K culture. What do you suppose is the linguistic impact of the Korean wave?
Well, sometimes the popularity of Korea today is likened to the popularity of France before. French culture became popular worldwide before Korean culture did. And indeed, French words were then exported to other languages. In English, I mean, you still hear a lot of, of course you hear a lot of French words because of what all happened in 1066 and all that unpleasantness. But after that, in the 20th century especially, there were more French importations, 19th and 20th century. So they're in English as well. They may be badly pronounced, they may be out of context, but they are there. And indeed, with these Korean words, I don't know that you'll hear them in daily conversation in the US, but maybe as time goes by, they'll be used in new acceptations, shall we say, because we can look at this from the other side, with Korea adopting not just English words from many languages, but especially English. There are many English loanwords in Korean, and in many cases, the meaning is drifted. They don't mean what they did in English, or they're constructions that are unknown in English. For example, an example of the first category would be 서비스. It's not service, it's getting something, when you get something for free at a restaurant, it seldom happens at all in the US, which is maybe one reason why the word can exist in two pronunciations in two cultural contexts. But an example of the second category would be officetel is a good one. Officetel, this combination of office, hotel, linguistically, but it's not really that in reality. The thing itself doesn't exist outside Korea, which is one reason why it gave me a little pause to see officetel make it into the OED, but I'm sure they had their reasons. And I think as time goes on, if Korea proves to have the kind of popularity, the kind of long-term popularity that French culture does, we'll see not just more Korean words in English, but they'll take on their own meanings in English. Whatever cultural context is using them, they'll drift into that context and maybe will become unfamiliar to Koreans in much the same way as Korean English doesn't always sound familiar to native English speakers.
Right. Camille, what about in France? Are Korean words in France adopted as they are, or do they take on a French twist, if you will?
I agree with what Colin just said. I think in the majority of the population, I think very few people know and use Korean words. In fact, I think only people who are interested in Korean culture use Korean words, or at least understand it. Of course, we have our own way to pronounce. For example, ramyeon would probably be ramyeon, with this difficult consonants that doesn't exist in Korean. There are even some words that K-pop fans, for instance, use because they are very specific words, like 막내, to designate the youngest person in a group. It's about being part of the community, but at the same time, there are also Korean people who are complaining about the way our different cultures distorted some words, as Colin just said. And I am not only talking about France, but also a lot of Western countries. So for instance, the word oppa, which is in the Oxford English Dictionary, is literally used as a big brother in Korea for a younger sister. And it's also used between close friends and just a way for women to designate or talk to an older man. But because it can also be used for a woman to call their boyfriend, the meaning has been distorted to a romantic way in countries other than Korea. And so some Koreans are complaining about not being called like that anymore by Korean younger girls, who are, according to them, trying to avoid that word because of the romantic meaning behind it, while at first it was not romantic at all.
Right, the word oppa, of course. Colin, the word 선배, as Chloe mentioned earlier, has been included in the Oxford English Dictionary recently, and as she pointed out, it refers to a member of either a group or organization, like a university or a workplace, considered a senior on account of age and experience, who is considered capable of providing guidance, assistance to a junior member. Now, despite its inclusion in the Oxford Dictionary, this particular word and other words referring to titles, job titles within the work arena. There are efforts to eliminate such words and instead to opt the suffix nim to the actual names of people within the workplace, or to require them to adopt English names. First then, for the sake of our foreign viewers, what is the meaning of the suffix nim? And second, what are your thoughts regarding these efforts to eradicate hierarchy, if you will, within the workplace?
Yes, English lacks honorific suffixes, so we'll see how well we can explain this. Nim is used in one word that most or all foreigners who come to Korea learn very quickly. And that word is sonsengnim, which refers to a teacher. So whether you're studying the Korean language and you'll have a sonsengnim in class, or you're coming to teach your own language, which is also very common, you might be called sonsengnim. So you hear this misuse fairly often where somebody will say, they'll describe themselves as a sonsengnim, applying the nim honorific suffix to themselves, and it's a faux pas, but I think people let it slide, knowing that they know the word sonsengnim, but not the function of nim itself. But now our viewers today know, so I don't think they'll make the same mistake. And yes, adding nim to the name it sounds a little awkward to my ear, but it's becoming more common. I've been called Colin nim more than a few times, and it seems like such a mismatch of register, but I can see the motivation behind it. And yes, as you mentioned, the attempt to fix, I suppose, or adjust the culture of hierarchy in the Korean workplace, one solution has involved, or one proposed attempted solution has involved requiring English names. And one place you see this is Starbucks. Any foreigner coming to Korea, and they often go to Starbucks. It's familiar. And it's familiar in most ways, but you go to the barista at the counter, and you'll see their name tag will not be Ji-hoon, will not be Eun-jong. It will say, Sarah, or Dave, or I've seen Mango. You see some not names exactly, but they're not Korean names. And the idea, I think, is it cannot be a Korean name. You've got to sort of culturally decontextualize yourself to get out of the Korean hierarchical mode. And to my mind, this smacks a bit of treating the symptom rather than the disease, if a disease it is, because yes, English does not. First of all, English doesn't have names. It's not a country. It's not a culture. It's a language. There are no English names. That aside, the English language, it may not have these sort of two modes, 존댓말 and 반말, the high and low register, the sort of honorific and less honorific register, much as there is in French, for example. But that's often, I think, misperceived, or that quality is misinterpreted by Koreans. They think that it means there is no hierarchy in, say, the United States or in an English-speaking country, when in fact, I was born and raised in the US. I lived there 30 years, I can tell you. Every interaction is hierarchically charged in the US. It's just that it's not in the language. It's not made explicit. And so just because you're not speaking upward to somebody grammatically or downward does not mean that that relationship doesn't exist. And I would say it's a choice not between hierarchy and a lack of hierarchy in sort of Korea versus the West, but overt hierarchy and covert hierarchy. And to my mind, even though I'm American, I kind of like to know which way the wind is blowing. And so in Korea, when you can hear it in the language to whom you're supposed to defer, I think there's something I've got used to about that. So I'm not sure that this is again, if it is a problem, if it's one that can be addressed in this sort of surface level manner.
Right. And Camille, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on these efforts to perhaps eradicate the top-down work culture here in the country?
I think actually many younger Korean, and like many of my Korean friends around my age or older don't like this top-down work culture. Hierarchy is part of Korean culture, of course, and they understand it, but still think it's sometimes too much. Whenever you call someone with that kind of suffix title, you remember their position in the hierarchy and you remember your own status. And I personally think there are already a lot of ways to show respect to a person in Korean, as Colin just said. You have the level of language, for instance, like with 읍니다, or suffix like 시다, and different verbs like 먹다 and 드시다, which mean eat, but not in the same. You will not address the same as your grandmother or your friends. So, for instance, in France, we hold doors when someone passes behind or before us. It is considered as basic respect and politeness. I can assure you I got a lot of doors slammed in my face here in South Korea. And whenever I hold the door for someone else, this person seems surprised. They act very surprised, but it only takes me some 1 or 2 seconds. So anyway, my opinion is that it's time to respect people no matter their position or age, but because they are human beings. And I also believe that the language, as many experts say, is shaping the way that we see the world.
Right. And speaking about age, Colin, I wonder, how does the age factor play into these efforts to eradicate hierarchy within the workplace, you think?
This is another experience that might stand out to a foreigner visiting Korea, to sort of enter into a group or be at a social gathering, and the first question you get is how old you are. The need to establish age it's all part of this. You need to know how to speak to somebody. Are you speaking upward or downward? And it's going to depend on what their age is relative to your own. And it's something you get used to after a while, but if you live in the West, especially the US, where really no one discusses age, sometimes it's a taboo in certain contexts, that does take a mental adjustment. But you can see this also just operating in the culture at large. South Korea is often described as male-dominated, a male-dominated society, which I think makes sense in most contexts when you have that interpretation. But then you come up against the age thing, and you'll see the most dominant, we used the word ajashi before, you see the most dominant ajashi type. Suddenly, a woman older than him tells him what to do, and he does it. And you think, wait, okay, I'm going to have to slightly revise my perceptions of Korea, because even the types with real swagger, I mean, they do defer to the age hierarchy. Even if the older person doesn't have a higher position in any other respect, they are, at the end of the day, older and should be at least deferred to sort of openly. Maybe you sort of do your own thing behind closed doors, but deference to age remains one of the characteristics that I think still stands out as different here in the eyes of many visiting Westerners.
Right, and speaking about age, Camille, younger workers here in South Korea have pointed to generational conflict within the workplace as a tangible hurdle. Is generational conflict simply a South Korean phenomenon?
Of course not. In neighboring countries like China or Japan, and even in other continents, Europe and North or South America, generational conflict exists, and not only within the workplace. But yeah, recently in South Korea, media outlets highlighted the so-called young 40s debate. So some people in their 40s are criticized by the youth for dressing or acting as if they are only 20. I personally think in terms of fashion, they do whatever they want. I mean, if you like the shoes, just wear the shoes. If the shoes are associated in people's opinion with younger bodies, so what? Maybe some people will judge and mock. But again, yeah, don't mind. Let's just normalize people doing whatever they want with their body. Now, that said, people in their 20s and 30s that are judging or mocking will get old one day. So I bet they won't be really happy if they can't wear whatever they want. It's not only a matter of clothing, obviously. We also have a kind of generational conflict in France, which has been reactivated, according to some experts, by a reform, the pension reform. You probably heard about it, Sunhee. People and the French youth in particular are very furious about it, working more and longer in time. So on one side, baby boomers born between 45 and 60 who benefit from a period of unprecedented economic growth and cling to their privileges. On the other side are the Generation Z and the working population who feel a certain resentment toward the elders, whom they are considered to be unconcerned about the sustainability of model based on intergenerational solidarity that is now under threat. So I believe that only dialogue and mutual understanding can resolve this kind of conflict.
Right, of course, dialogue. Colin, in the meantime, what's your take with regard to the generational gap here in South Korea?
Well, the first time I came to Korea, the generation gap was visible in that young people were about a foot taller than their parents, which tells you something about the nature of the generation gap here. And well, it's really the same everywhere in that, to give a bit of context, I mean, why do we have the phrase generation gap? If you go back to the ancient Greeks, they're complaining about young people, but it's not a generation gap, it's just complaining about the nature of youth, the immaturity of youth, and they'll gain maturity and they'll join us in our ways, and all that's well and good. But then later on, you get societies themselves changing so rapidly that young people grow up in a different society than their parents did, even if they live in the exact same place. And true enough, when that phrase generation gap came into big use, into widespread use in the US, it was when the US was really changing every sort of 10 years. It was growing so rapidly economically and in other ways that somebody born in sort of somebody who grew up in the Great Depression had a very different experience than their kids who might have been born in the sort of post-World War II era. Now, here in Korea, as is often said, the story of development, of industrialization, of modernization was very different in that it was so fast. It was the most rapid modernization of any country to that time. Maybe China has gone faster now, but Korea sort of set the precedent there. And when you bear that in mind and think, okay, what does that mean for the generations here? A young person born in 2000, has never known a Korea that wasn't wealthy, really, has never known a non-developed Korea. Even when they were born, 2000 Korea was still in the league of advanced industrialized democracies. It was pretty much where everybody wanted Korea to be, and that's what a 25-year-old has always known. Their parents, born in, say, 1970, they grew up in a dictatorship, in a military dictatorship, with all the rigors that entailed, and they witnessed a lot of change in their life, and they came of age in a way as modern South Korea did. Now, their parents, the young person's grandparents, born in, say, 1940, will have memories that are memories of poverty, hardship, and even violence that will be unbelievable to, again, the 25-year-old today. So when you take that into account, the generation gap here and its persistence and its impediment to communication between the generations is explicable. They grew up in different realities, and it's like an American talking to their great-grandparents, like a young Korean talking to their even parents. So you can understand why they have failures to communicate. And as well, I mean, oftentimes, talking to, say, somebody who's in their 70s, 80s now, they actually do speak differently. They have, it's not quite their own Saturi dialect, but they are difficult to understand. And when I have these experiences myself, trying to talk to someone much older, I think, boy, you know, a lot of history has happened in Korea in these past 50, 60, 70 years, and you feel it every time you encounter somebody who's been shaped by it.
Right, like you said, a lot of history has indeed taken place here in the country over those years. I'm afraid that's all the time we have. Colin, as always, thank you so much for your insights today.
Thank you.
Camille, thank you very much for your time and your thoughts.
Thank you, Sunny.
Right, on that note, we end this week's editions of Press Perspective. Have a great weekend. Do join us again, same time next Monday, for our panel session on geopolitics and more.